the hook. The fluorescent lights in the prison hospital buzzed like dying insects as Vincent Romano drifted in and out of consciousness. Tubes snaked from his arms, monitoring his vitals while machines beeped their electronic lullaby. 47 wounds. The doctors had counted each one, mapping them like a road map of violence across his weathered body. 3 days had passed since the attack. 3 days of morphine dreams and whispered conversations between nurses who thought he was unconscious. 3 days of FBI agents pacing the hallway outside, their shoes squeaking against polished linoleum as they tried to piece together how their star witness had nearly been filleted like a fish in the most secure prison in America. Vincent's throat felt like sandpaper when he finally found his voice. "Water," he croaked to the night nurse, a heavy-set woman named Betty who had been sneaking him extra pudding cups when the feds weren't looking. "You're awake," she said, rushing to his bedside with a plastic cup and bendy straw. "The agents want to talk to you." "I bet they do." Vincent sipped the water slowly, each swallow a reminder of the blade that had nearly opened his jugular. Carmine Torino had always been sloppy with a knife, too eager, not precise enough. It's what had saved Vincent's life and what had gotten Carmine a bullet to the head in the prison yard 2 hours after the attack. The official story was that Carmine had slipped on his own mop water while trying to escape, cracking his skull on the concrete. Vincent knew better. Dead men told no tales, and someone needed Carmine's tale buried deep. Agent Sarah Martinez appeared in the doorway like she'd been summoned by telepathy. Vincent had worked with her for 3 years, feeding her intelligence about the Torino and Castellano crime families in exchange for protection and a reduced sentence. She was young, ambitious, and believed the federal government could keep its promises. Vincent had been that naive once, about 40 years ago. "Feeling better?" Martinez pulled a chair next to his bed, her dark eyes studying his bandaged form. She looked tired, older than her 30-something years. Failed witness protection cases had a way of aging agents fast. "Like I got hit by a truck driven by my ex-wife." Vincent managed a weak smile. "But you didn't come here to check on my health. Someone leaked your location, Vincent. Your cell assignment, your routine, everything. This wasn't some random prison violence. It was a coordinated hit." She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. "We think there's a mole in the bureau." Vincent almost laughed, but it would have torn his stitches. A mole in the FBI. These people watched too many movies. The truth was always simpler and uglier than conspiracy theories. "You find anything in Carmine's cell?" he asked. "Cleaned out. Professional job." Martinez pulled out a tablet, swiping through crime scene photos. "But we did intercept some interesting communications. Phone calls made from a burner phone 3 days before the attack." She turned the screen toward him. Vincent's eyes focused on a transcription of a phone conversation, time-stamped 2 hours before Carmine had received his work assignment to Vincent's block. "The old man needs to go. Tonight. No mistakes this time." "What about after?" "You want us to." "After, you disappear. Permanently. Loose ends get people killed." Vincent's blood chilled as he read the caller ID information at the bottom of the page. The burner phone had been purchased with a credit card registered to Romano Construction LLC, a company that had been in his family for 3 generations, a company currently managed by his son Michael. Vincent Martinez's voice seemed to come from underwater. "Do you recognize that business name?" He closed his eyes, feeling the weight of 3 years' worth of careful survival crashing down around him. All the deals he'd made, all the families he'd betrayed, all the blood on his hands, it had all been to protect Michael. To give his son a chance at a legitimate life, away from the violence that had claimed Vincent's father and grandfather. Instead, Michael had become everything Vincent had tried to save him from. "It's my son's company," Vincent whispered, his voice barely audible above the heart monitor's accelerating beeps. Martinez sat back in her chair like she'd been slapped. "Your son ordered the hit?" Vincent opened his eyes, staring at the acoustic tiles on the ceiling. Each tile was full of tiny holes, like bullet wounds in white plaster. Michael always was a smart kid, probably figured killing his rat father was the only way to earn respect with the families. "Jesus, Vincent. I'm sorry." "Don't be." Vincent's voice hardened, 3 years of playing the cooperative witness evaporating like steam. You want your mole? You want to know how Carmine got close enough to turn me into Swiss cheese? My son didn't just order the hit. He planned every detail. The heart monitor's beeping slowed as Vincent forced himself to breathe normally. Survival in his world meant adapting quickly to new realities. His son wanted him dead. Fine. Family business had always been complicated. Here's what we're going to do, Vincent said, his eyes meeting Martinez's with the cold calculation that had once made him the most feared enforcer in Philadelphia. We're going to give Michael exactly what he thinks he wants. Introduction. Martinez's pen hovered over her notepad, trembling slightly. In 3 years of debriefing Vincent Romano, she'd never seen this look in his eyes, the cold, predatory focus that reminded her why federal prosecutors had once called him the surgeon for his precise and methodical approach to violence. What exactly does that mean, Vincent? She asked, though part of her didn't want to know the answer. Vincent shifted against the hospital pillows, wincing as the movement pulled at his stitches. The morphine was wearing off, and with it, the protective haze that had cushioned him from the full weight of his son's betrayal. It means Michael thinks he's playing chess, but he's only learned checkers. He closed his eyes, and for a moment, Martinez saw past the hardened criminal to the broken father underneath. You ever have kids, Agent Martinez? No. Smart woman. Vincent's laugh was bitter. 28 years ago, I held that boy in my hands for the first time. 7 pounds, 2 ounces. Had this tiny birthmark on his shoulder, shaped like a crescent moon. His mother said it looked like God's fingertip, marking him as special. The heart monitor's rhythm steadied as Vincent sank deeper into memory. I made promises that night, to Michael, to his mother, to myself, that my son would never know the taste of blood under his fingernails, that he'd never wake up wondering if today was the day someone put a bullet in his head. Martinez watched him carefully. This was the most personal Vincent had ever been during their sessions. Usually, he dispensed information about criminal enterprises with the detached efficiency of an accountant reading tax codes. This felt different, raw, dangerous. The construction company was supposed to be legitimate, Vincent continued. Started it when Michael was 12, using clean money from investments my father had made before he got into the life. Real permits, real contracts, real payroll. I kept it completely separate from family business. But your son knew what you really did for a living? Kids aren't stupid. They hear things, see things. Maria, his mother, she tried to shield him, but you can only hide so much blood from sharp eyes. Vincent's voice softened at the mention of his ex-wife. She left us when Michael was 16, took nothing but her clothes and a promise from me that I'd never contact her again. The fluorescent light above flickered, casting intermittent shadows across Vincent's face. Smart woman, like I said. She saw where things were heading before I did. Martinez leaned forward. Where were things heading? War. The word hung in the air like smoke. The Torello family had been muscling in on our territory for months. Old school muscle. The kind of territorial pissing contest that gets everyone bloody. My father wanted me to handle it the traditional way. Bodies in dumpsters. Families wiping out families until someone surrendered or died trying. Vincent opened his eyes, staring at the ceiling tiles again. But I had a 17-year-old son who was 3 months away from starting college on a full academic scholarship. Engineering major. Kid had plans to build bridges, can you believe that? While I was burning them down, he wanted to build them up. So you made the deal with us instead. Took me 6 months to set it up properly. Fed you information slowly, let you think you were turning me gradually instead of all at once. Had to make it look authentic, or the families would smell the setup. Vincent's voice grew distant. The night before your people arrested me, I had dinner with Michael. Told him I loved him, that everything I'd done was to give him choices I never had. What did he say? He asked me if I was proud of the man I'd become. Vincent's laugh was hollow. I told him pride was a luxury I'd never been able to afford. Guess he took that as his inheritance. Martinez studied the transcription on her tablet again. The construction company. How many employees? 47 on the payroll. Mix of ex-cons and neighborhood kids who needed steady work. Michael's been running it since I got locked up, keeping it profitable, keeping it clean. Vincent paused. Or so I thought. We can check financial records, see if... No. Vincent's voice cut through her suggestion like a blade. Michael's not stupid enough to run dirty money through the company books. If he's playing with the families, he's doing it old school. Cash, handshakes, favors traded in dark rooms. The weight of realization settled over both of them. If Michael Romano was operating outside the legitimate business structure, finding evidence of his criminal activities would be nearly impossible. He'd learned from his father's mistakes while embracing his father's methods. "You said we're going to give him what he wants," Martinez said quietly. "What did you mean?" Vincent turned his head to look directly at her, and she saw something that made her skin crawl, the cold satisfaction of a predator who just spotted wounded prey. "My son wants me dead to prove himself to the families," Vincent said. "So we're going to let him think he succeeded." Martinez stared at Vincent, trying to process what he'd just said. "You want to fake your death?" "Not fake it. Stage it." Vincent's voice carried the measured tone of someone who'd thought this through completely. "Michael's watching every move the Bureau makes. He's got sources, probably more than we realize. A fake death won't fool him for long." The door to the hospital room opened, and Dr. Patricia Hayes entered with a clipboard, her tired eyes scanning Vincent's vitals chart. She'd been treating him since the attack, professional but wary, like she understood exactly what kind of man lay in the bed under her care. "Agent Martinez, I need to check his dressings," Dr. Hayes said, but her tone suggested she had more to discuss than wound care. "Doc, how bad do I look to an outsider?" Vincent asked, before Martinez could respond. Dr. Hayes raised an eyebrow. "You look like someone tried to turn you into confetti with a very sharp knife." "Why?" "Professional curiosity." Vincent caught Martinez's eye. "Doctor, if someone wanted to make it appear that a patient had died from complications related to his injuries, how would that work?" The room fell silent except for the steady beep of monitoring equipment. Dr. Hayes set down her clipboard with deliberate care. "Mr. Romano, I'm going to pretend I didn't hear that question. But theoretically..." "There is no theoretically." Dr. Hayes moved to check Vincent's foreline, her movements sharp with suppressed anger. "I took an oath to do no harm. That includes not participating in whatever scheme you're cooking up." Martinez felt the conversation spiraling beyond her control. "Vincent, we need to think this through." She was interrupted by her phone buzzing, a text message from her supervisor priority briefing. "Conference room 2. Now." "I have to go," Martinez said, standing. "Don't do anything stupid while I'm gone." As she reached the door, Vincent called after her. "Agent Martinez, ask them about the Romano construction contract with the federal courthouse renovation project. Ask them why my son's company was awarded a no-bid contract 3 weeks before the attack." Martinez froze, her hand on the door handle. A federal construction contract would mean background checks, security clearances, detailed oversight. If Michael Romano was involved with criminal enterprises, that contract should never have been approved. "How do you know about that?" she asked. "Because my son sent me the newspaper clipping," Vincent said quietly. 2 days before Carmine tried to carve me up." Dr. Hayes looked between them, confusion creasing her features. Vincent reached for the bedside table drawer, his movements careful and measured. From inside, he withdrew a folded piece of newspaper, yellowed at the edges. "Betty brought me my mail yesterday," he said, handing the clipping to Martinez. This was in an envelope with no return address, postmarked from Philadelphia. Martinez unfolded the newspaper clipping. The headline read, "Romano Construction wins federal contract." Below it was a photo of Michael Romano shaking hands with a federal judge, both men smiling at the camera. Michael looked older than she'd expected, his dark hair graying at the temples, his face carrying the same sharp intelligence as his father's. But it wasn't the article that made Martinez's blood run cold. It was the handwritten note in the margin, 3 words in careful block letters, "Thinking of you." "Jesus Christ," she whispered. "My boy always had a sense of humor," Vincent said, but his voice carried no warmth. "He wanted me to know he was doing business with the same federal government I'd made my deal with. Wanted me to understand how close he could get to the people protecting me." Dr. Hayes stepped closer, reading over Martinez's shoulder. "That's the courthouse renovation project. We've had construction workers in and out of the federal building for months." The implications hit Martinez like a physical blow. If Michael Romano's company had access to the federal building, he could have accessed prisoner transport schedules, security protocols, even FBI communications. He wouldn't need a mole in the bureau. He'd had front-row seats to their entire operation. "The attack wasn't just personal," Martinez said, sinking back into her chair. "It was a message to the FBI. He was showing us how easily he could reach our witnesses." Vincent nodded slowly. "Michael's not just trying to kill his father. He's positioning himself as the man who can compromise federal witness protection. That's worth a lot more to the families than simple revenge." The heart monitor's beeping accelerated again as Vincent's pulse spiked. "Every witness in federal custody just became vulnerable because of my son's ambition." Martinez's phone buzzed again, this time with a call from her supervisor. She answered without looking away from Vincent Martinez. "Get down here now." Deputy Director Harrison's voice was sharp with urgency. "We've got a problem. Romano Construction just submitted a bid for the ADX Florence Security Upgrade Project." The phone slipped from Martinez's hand, clattering against the hospital floor. Vincent watched her face drain of color and smiled, a cold, predatory expression that reminded her exactly who she was dealing with. "Now do you understand why we need to give my son what he wants?" Vincent said softly, "before he destroys everything we've both worked for." Martinez bent to retrieve her phone from the hospital floor, her hands shaking as Deputy Director Harrison's voice continued barking through the speaker. She ended the call without responding and stared at Vincent, whose predatory smile had faded into something resembling genuine concern. "Sarah," Vincent said, using her first name for the first time in 3 years. "You need to understand something about my son. He doesn't make moves unless he's already 3 steps ahead of everyone else in the room." Dr. Hayes backed toward the door, clearly wanting no part of whatever federal crisis was unfolding in her hospital. "I'll check on you later, Mr. Romano." After she left, Martinez sank into the chair beside Vincent's bed, suddenly feeling the weight of her inexperience. The security upgrade project, if Michael gets that contract, he'll have access to every inch of this facility. Guard rotations, cell assignments, visitor protocols, everything. Vincent's voice was matter-of-fact, but Martinez could see the fear flickering behind his calculated composure. "ADX Florence isn't just my prison, Sarah. It's home to terrorists, cartel leaders, mob bosses from every family on the East Coast." The fluorescent light continued its intermittent flickering, casting shifting shadows that made Vincent's face appear alternately predatory and vulnerable. "Michael isn't just positioning himself to kill me anymore. He's positioning himself to broker deals with every major criminal organization in federal custody." Martinez's phone buzzed with another urgent text from Harrison. She ignored it, studying Vincent's face for signs of deception. In 3 years of debriefings, she'd learned to read his tells, the slight tightening around his eyes when he held back information, the way his voice softened when he talked about people he genuinely cared about. Right now, she saw something she'd never seen before, genuine terror, carefully masked but unmistakable. "You're scared," she said. "Terrified," Vincent admitted. "But not for the reasons you think." Before Martinez could respond, voices echoed in the hallway outside. She recognized Agent Chen's distinctive laugh, followed by the heavier footsteps of Deputy Director Harrison himself. They were coming to collect her, to drag her into a crisis briefing where she'd have to explain how a 3-year investigation had been compromised by a construction contract. "Vincent, I need you to tell me everything about Michael's connections. Who he might be working with, what families would trust him enough to—" "No." Vincent's interruption was soft but absolute. "You're thinking like a federal agent, Sarah. You want to build a case, gather evidence, follow proper procedure. But my son isn't operating in your world anymore." The footsteps in the hallway grew louder. Martinez could hear Harrison's voice now, asking a nurse for directions to Vincent's room. "Then what do you suggest?" Martinez whispered urgently. Vincent closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, Martinez saw the transformation she'd witnessed once before, during his first interrogation. The cooperative witness disappeared, replaced by the cold strategist who'd survived 40 years in organized crime. I suggest you stop treating this like a federal investigation and start treating it like a war, Vincent said quietly, because that's what Michael has declared, not just on me, but on every deal the Bureau has made with every witness in federal protection. The door opened, and Deputy Director Harrison entered with Agent Chen and two men Martinez didn't recognize, their suits too expensive, their posture too rigid for standard Bureau personnel. Internal affairs, or worse. Agent Martinez, Harrison said, his voice carrying the particular exhaustion of a career bureaucrat dealing with a crisis above his pay grade. We need to talk. Vincent watched the federal agents file into the room with the detached interest of a chess player studying his opponent's pieces. Deputy Director Harrison, he said conversationally, I assume you're here about my son's business ventures. Harrison's face darkened. Mr. Romano, you are not part of this conversation. Actually, Vincent said, shifting carefully against his pillows, I think you'll find I'm the only part of this conversation that matters, because in about 6 hours, when the contracting board reviews the security upgrade proposals, you're going to discover that Romano Construction submitted the lowest bid and the most comprehensive security assessment you've ever seen. The unnamed agents exchanged glances. Martinez felt the temperature in the room drop several degrees. How could you possibly know that? Harrison demanded. Vincent's smile returned, cold and knowing. Because my son doesn't just want me dead, Deputy Director. He wants me to watch everything I helped you build crumble before he finally finishes what Carmine started. Agent Chen stepped forward, his hand instinctively moving toward his weapon. Are you threatening federal agents, Romano? No, Vincent said softly. I'm trying to save them. But you're going to have to decide very quickly whether you trust the man who's been feeding you intelligence for 3 years, or the bureaucratic procedures that are about to get every witness in federal protection killed. The heart monitor's beeping accelerated as Vincent's pulse spiked again, and Martinez realized with growing horror that they were already too late to stop whatever Michael Romano had set in motion. The silence stretched for 30 seconds that felt like 30 minutes. Harrison's jaw worked soundlessly, his career bureaucrat composure cracking under the weight of Vincent's implications. The two unnamed agents flanked the doorway like sentries, their expensive suits and dead eyes confirming Martinez's worst suspicions about who had sent them. 6 hours, one of the unnamed agents finally spoke, his voice carrying a Brooklyn accent that seemed familiar to Vincent. That's not enough time to halt a federal contracting process. Vincent's eyes narrowed, studying the man's face with sudden intensity. Do I know you? We've never met, but something flickered across the agent's features. Recognition, maybe, or fear. Agent Martinez, Harrison said sharply, you're being reassigned effective immediately. Agent Chen will handle the Romano case going forward. Martinez felt the ground shifting beneath her feet. Sir, with respect, I've built a relationship with the witness over 3 years. Replacing me now is necessary. The second unnamed agent interrupted. Mr. Romano's son has demonstrated an ability to compromise bureau operations. We need fresh eyes, clean contacts. Vincent let out a sound that might have been laughter if it weren't so hollow. Fresh eyes, clean contacts. He repeated the phrases like he was tasting something bitter. You think Michael doesn't already know everyone in your chain of command? You think those background checks for the courthouse contract didn't give him access to personnel files? That's impossible, Chen protested. Security clearances don't work that way. Security clearances work exactly that way when you're sleeping with the deputy administrator's daughter, Vincent said quietly. The room went dead silent. Martinez watched Harrison's face cycle through confusion, denial, and dawning horror in rapid succession. Explain, Harrison demanded. Vincent closed his eyes, and Martinez could see him weighing his words, calculating how much truth would serve his purposes. My son has been dating Jennifer Carlisle for 8 months. Carlisle, that name ring any bells, Deputy Director? Harrison's complexion went ashen. Robert Carlisle's daughter. The same Robert Carlisle who oversees federal contracting for the Eastern District. The same Robert Carlisle who probably goes home every night and complains about his workday to his loving family. Vincent opened his eyes, fixing his gaze on Harrison. My son isn't just building construction projects, he's building relationships, personal ones, the kind that make people want to help him succeed. Martinez felt something cold spreading in her chest as the implications crystallized. How long have you known about this relationship? I've suspected for 2 months. Confirmed it yesterday when Jennifer visited him at his office. Vincent's voice carried a weight that hadn't been there before. Not fear, but something deeper. Regret, maybe, or recognition of a terrible inevitability. Betty saw the newspaper photos in the society section. Young couple at charity galas, looking very much in love. The unnamed agent with the Brooklyn accent stepped closer to Vincent's bed. You're suggesting your son seduced a federal administrator's daughter as part of a criminal conspiracy. I'm not suggesting anything, Vincent replied. I'm telling you that my boy fell in love with a girl who happened to have access to exactly the information he needed to destroy everything I built with the Bureau. And I'm telling you that Michael is smart enough to use that love as a weapon, even if it destroys them both. Agent Chen pulled out his phone, presumably to run a background check on Jennifer Carlisle. Harrison looked like he wanted to vomit. Even if this is true, Harrison said, we can still halt the contracting process, investigate the relationship, build a case. With what evidence? Vincent asked. Love letters? Dinner receipts? You think Michael was stupid enough to put his plans in writing? His voice grew softer, more dangerous. My son learned from watching me get caught, deputy director. He knows exactly what mistakes not to make. Martinez found herself thinking about the newspaper clipping, the handwritten note in the margin. The message you received, thinking of you. That wasn't just taunting, was it? That was him telling you he'd found a way to get close to federal operations. Michael always was sentimental, Vincent said, but his tone suggested sentiment was the last thing on his son's mind. He wanted me to know that everything I sacrificed to keep him clean had been for nothing, that he'd chosen this life anyway, and he was better at it than I'd ever been. The heart monitor's beeping grew irregular as Vincent's pulse fluctuated. Dr. Hayes appeared in the doorway, drawn by the alarm, but stopped when she saw the crowd of federal agents. Gentlemen, my patient needs rest, she said firmly. Whatever this is, it can wait. No, Vincent said, his voice barely above a whisper. It can't wait. Because in 5 hours and 37 minutes, Michael's going to walk into that contracting board meeting with a proposal that gives him access to every federal witness in protective custody. And the woman he loves is going to help him get it approved. The terrible certainty in Vincent's voice made Martinez understand that they weren't dealing with a criminal conspiracy anymore. They were watching a family destroy itself, one betrayal at a time, and taking the federal witness protection program down with it. Harrison's phone buzzed insistently against the hospital room's oppressive silence. He glanced at the screen and his face went completely white. The contracting meeting moved up. They're convening in 90 minutes. Martinez watched Vincent's reaction. Not surprise, but the grim satisfaction of a man whose worst predictions were proving correct. He's accelerating the timeline, Vincent said. Something spooked him. The Brooklyn accented agent stepped forward again, and this time Vincent's eyes locked onto his face with laser focus. I do know you, Vincent said slowly. Tommy Benedetto's cousin. Anthony, right? You were running numbers in Bensonhurst when I was still working for the Colombos. Agent Anthony Torino's carefully constructed federal facade cracked for just an instant. You're mistaken. No, Vincent said, his voice carrying deadly certainty. I'm not. And now I understand exactly how my son knew I'd be in that laundry room 3 days ago. The revelation hit the room like a grenade. Martinez saw Harrison take an involuntary step backward, Chen's hand moving instinctively toward his weapon. But Vincent wasn't looking at any of them anymore. His gaze had turned inward, and Martinez recognized the expression, the same look he'd worn during those first debriefings when he was mentally cataloging years of betrayals and calculating their cost. How long, Anthony? Vincent asked softly. How long have you been feeding information to my son? I don't know what you're talking about, Torino replied, but sweat had begun beading on his forehead despite the hospital's aggressive air conditioning. Vincent smiled, and Martinez felt her blood turn to ice water. It was the same predatory expression she'd seen him wear when he described his most brutal enforcement jobs, the look of a man who had found his prey's weakness and was savoring the moment before he struck. "You want to know why the attack failed?" Vincent said, his voice conversational but somehow terrifying. "It wasn't because Carmine lost his nerve, or because Dr. Hayes happened to walk by at the right moment. It failed because Michael wanted it to fail." The words hung in the air like smoke from a gunshot. Martinez felt everything she thought she understood about the past 3 days rearranging itself into a completely different pattern. "That's impossible," Chen said. "Why would your son orchestrate an assassination attempt that he wanted to fail?" "Because Michael isn't trying to kill me," Vincent said, his voice growing softer with each word. "He's trying to make me watch while he destroys everything I sacrificed 40 years of my life to build." The attack was theater, a demonstration of how easily he could reach me, how completely he'd compromised federal security. Harrison sank into the room's only chair, looking like a man watching his career evaporate in real time. "You're saying your own son is torturing you." "I'm saying my son learned everything I taught him about patience, planning, and the psychology of power." Vincent's voice carried a note that Martinez had never heard before, something that might have been pride if it weren't so utterly poisoned by regret. "And he's using those lessons to prove that he's better at this game than I ever was." Torino made a subtle move toward the door, but Chen blocked his path. The unnamed agent's composure had completely shattered, revealing the frightened criminal underneath the federal badge. "The construction contracts, the security clearances, even Agent Torino here," Vincent continued, watching Anthony's growing panic with clinical interest. "Michael has been building this operation for months, maybe years, and every step of the way, he's been feeding me just enough information to make me complicit in my own destruction." Martinez thought about all the intelligence Vincent had provided over 3 years, detailed information about mob operations, locations of bodies, financial records that had taken down 3 separate crime families, information that had seemed too good to be true. "The intelligence you've been giving us," she said, the horrible realization dawning. "Michael wanted you to give us that information. He was using you to eliminate his competition." "My son has been playing a longer game than any of us realized," Vincent said. "Every family I helped you destroy, every capo I helped you arrest, they were obstacles to Michael's rise. I thought I was building a case against organized crime. I was actually helping my son consolidate power." The heart monitor's alarm began shrieking as Vincent's pulse spiked dangerously high. Dr. Hayes pushed past the federal agents, but Vincent waved her away with surprising strength. "And the most beautiful part," Vincent continued, his voice barely audible over the machine's protests, "is that he's going to complete this operation using the exact same federal witness protection program that I thought would keep me safe from him." Harrison stood slowly, his face gray with the understanding that they had been outmaneuvered so thoroughly that their own investigation had become the weapon pointed at their hearts. "Jesus Christ," Martinez whispered. "We've been working for him this entire time." The admission hung in the sterile air like a death sentence. Martinez watched Vincent's face transform as the weight of his son's masterpiece settled over him. Not the cooperative federal witness anymore, but something harder and infinitely more dangerous. "Turn off the recording equipment," Vincent said quietly. Harrison shook his head automatically. "Everything said in this room is... turn it off, or watch your entire witness protection program collapse in 37 minutes when Michael walks into that meeting." Vincent's voice carried the absolute authority of a man who had nothing left to lose. "Because what I'm about to tell you isn't going in any federal file." Martinez glanced at Harrison, seeing her own desperation reflected in his eyes. Chen reluctantly reached for the digital recorder clipped to his jacket. The soft click of the device shutting down felt like a door closing on everything they'd built over 3 years. "Good," Vincent said. "Now get Dr. Hayes out of here, and cuff Anthony to that chair before he tries something stupid." Torino lunged for the door, but Chen was faster. The corrupt agent hit the floor hard, his federal badge skittering across the linoleum like a discarded coin. Harrison barked orders for zip ties while Dr. Hayes protested the violation of her medical authority, but Martinez barely heard any of it. She was watching Vincent prepare for something that felt like a final confession. "You want to stop my son?" Vincent asked once the room had cleared of everyone except the core team. "Then you need to understand what you're really fighting. This isn't organized crime as you know it. Michael has created something new, something that uses federal law enforcement as its enforcement arm." Martinez pulled her chair closer to Vincent's bed. "Explain." "Traditional families operate through fear, territory, traditional revenue streams. Michael operates through information and institutional corruption. He doesn't need soldiers when he can manipulate federal agents. He doesn't need territory when he can control the systems that are supposed to protect his enemies." Vincent paused, his breathing labored, but his voice gaining strength. "Every witness I helped you flip, every operation I gave you intelligence on, Michael knew about it before you did. He's been using my debriefings to map the entire federal witness network." The implications hit Martinez like a physical blow. Hundreds of protected witnesses, families relocated under new identities, people who had trusted that their cooperation with law enforcement would keep them safe. "He's not just targeting you," she whispered. "He's targeting the entire concept of federal protection," Vincent confirmed. "Think about it. If witnesses start dying in custody, if protection deals start failing, who's going to cooperate with law enforcement? Michael's not just consolidating power, he's making his world invisible to federal investigation." Harrison had gone completely pale. The contracting meeting. If he gets access to facility security, he gets access to every witness location, every safe house, every relocated family. Vincent closed his eyes, and Martinez saw him calculating something terrible. But that's not the worst part. Chen looked up from securing Torino. "What's worse than exposing every federal witness?" Vincent opened his eyes, and Martinez saw something she'd never seen there before. Not fear or regret, but a kind of terrible clarity. "The worst part is that I taught him how to do all of this. Every technique, every psychological manipulation, every way to read people and exploit their weaknesses. I created the perfect predator and then fed him to the system I was supposed to be helping." The heart monitor's rhythm grew more erratic, matching the chaos of Martinez's thoughts. She found herself thinking about Jennifer Carlisle, probably getting ready for work right now, maybe choosing an outfit for what she thought was a normal day at the federal building. A young woman in love, completely unaware that her boyfriend was using their relationship to destroy lives. "What about Jennifer?" Martinez asked. "Does she know what he's doing?" Vincent's expression softened for the first time, revealing a glimpse of the father underneath the federal witness. "That's the one thing I can't figure out. Michael's not cruel for the sake of cruelty. If he loves her, really loves her, he might be trying to protect her from the truth. Or he's planning to destroy her too," Harrison said grimly. "No." Vincent's voice carried surprising conviction. "I know my son. He's capable of terrible things, but he doesn't destroy innocents unless he has to. Jennifer represents something he's never had before, a chance at a normal life, even if it's built on lies." Martinez felt a spark of possibility. "Then she's his weakness." Vincent was quiet for a long moment, studying Martinez's face with the intensity of a man making a final judgment. When he spoke again, his voice was barely audible, but every word carried the weight of absolute certainty. "No, Agent Martinez. Jennifer isn't his weakness, she's his strength. And if you want to stop what's coming, you're going to have to be willing to destroy an innocent woman to do it." The terrible mathematics of Vincent's strategy settled over the room like a shroud, and Martinez realized they had reached the point where every choice led to damnation. The silence stretched between them like a taut wire, vibrating with the weight of unspoken understanding. Martinez felt herself standing at the edge of an abyss, knowing that whatever came next would change her in ways she couldn't undo. "You're asking me to destroy an innocent woman, to save the lives of federal witnesses," she said finally. Vincent's nod was almost imperceptible. "I'm asking you to choose between Jennifer Carlisle's happiness and the survival of 347 people currently under federal protection." Harrison stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "There has to be another way. We can't. There is no other way. Vincent's voice cut through Harrison's protest with surgical precision. Michael has spent 3 years building this operation around one central vulnerability: his love for that woman. It's the only human emotion he couldn't completely control or eliminate, and it's the only weapon we have left. Martinez found herself thinking about her own choices, the compromises she'd made over 15 years with the Bureau. Small betrayals of principle that had accumulated like poison in her bloodstream. But this was different. This was choosing to detonate someone's entire existence to serve a greater good that felt increasingly abstract. "What exactly are you proposing?" she asked. Vincent's breathing grew shallow, but his voice remained steady. Jennifer doesn't know that her boyfriend is using their relationship to access classified federal information. But she does know that he's been asking questions about her father's work. Casual questions that any boyfriend might ask. Questions about contracts, security procedures, personnel files. Chen looked up from where he was monitoring the still restrained Torino. "You think she's been feeding him information without realizing it?" "I think Jennifer Carlisle is a woman in love who wants to share her life with someone she trusts completely," Vincent replied. "And I think Michael has been very careful to make his curiosity seem natural." Martinez felt the pieces clicking into place with horrible clarity. If we confront her with the truth about what Michael really is, she becomes a weapon against him, Vincent finished. A woman who realizes that everything she believed about their relationship was a lie. That the man she loves has been manipulating her to destroy innocent people. Harrison shook his head violently. "We can't manipulate a civilian like that. It's unconscionable." "More unconscionable than letting Michael execute 300 federal witnesses?" Vincent's question hung in the air like smoke from a funeral pyre. Martinez closed her eyes, trying to find some moral framework that could accommodate what they were discussing. But every angle she examined led to the same brutal calculus: destroy one innocent woman, or watch hundreds of other innocents die. "Even if we do this," she said slowly, "even if we turn Jennifer against Michael, how does that stop the contracting meeting? He could still get approval without her father's influence." Vincent smiled, and Martinez saw the predator beneath the dying man's facade. Because Michael's greatest strength is also his fatal flaw. He's so confident in his psychological control that he's never considered what happens when someone he loves looks at him with complete understanding of what he really is. The heart monitor's rhythm grew more irregular as Vincent continued. "I've seen it destroy stronger men than my son. The moment when someone who loves you sees through all your lies and realizes they never really knew you at all. It doesn't just break your heart, it breaks your mind." Martinez thought about her own relationships, the careful compartmentalization required to do this job without destroying the people she cared about, the weight of secrets, the constant calculation of what truths could be safely shared. "You're gambling that emotional devastation will make him vulnerable enough to stop," she said. "I'm gambling that my son is still human enough to be destroyed by love," Vincent replied. "It's the only bet I have left." Harrison was pacing now, his federal training warring with a situation that existed outside any ethical framework he'd been taught. "The Bureau will never sanction this kind of operation." "The Bureau doesn't need to sanction it," Martinez said, the words coming from some deep place she didn't recognize. "Jennifer Carlisle deserves to know the truth about the man she's planning to marry. We're not manipulating her. We're giving her information she has a right to have." Vincent's eyes found hers, and she saw approval there that made her stomach turn. "Very good, Agent Martinez. You're learning to think like my son." The comparison hit her like a slap, but she forced herself to continue the calculation. If we approach her carefully, present the evidence without coercion, she'll confront Michael, Chen said, understanding dawning in his voice. "And when she does, he'll have to choose between his operation and the woman he loves," Vincent finished, "and that choice will destroy him either way." The room fell silent except for the mechanical breathing of the heart monitor and Torino's labored breathing from his position on the floor. Martinez realized they had crossed a line that none of them could uncross, and somewhere in the city, Jennifer Carlisle was getting dressed for the most important day of her life, completely unaware that it was about to end in ashes. "She left him," Vincent whispered, his voice barely audible in the pre-dawn darkness. "Jennifer Harrison told me yesterday." Martinez nodded, though she wasn't sure he could see her anymore. His eyes had grown cloudy, unfocused, but somehow still sharp with the intelligence that had made him both the perfect witness and the perfect father to a monster. "After she confronted him?" Martinez asked. "No, before." Vincent's lips curved into something that might have been a smile. "That's the part that surprised me. When we showed her the evidence, when she understood what Michael really was, she didn't scream or cry or demand explanations. She just went home, packed her things, and disappeared." The silence stretched between them, filled with the weight of unfinished business. Through the window, Martinez could see the sun beginning to rise over ADX Florence, painting the concrete walls the color of old blood. In 6 hours, visiting hours would begin, but Vincent wouldn't see another sunset. The contracting meeting never happened, Martinez said. Michael withdrew his company's bid the same day Jennifer left. No explanation, no rescheduling. Just gone. Vincent closed his eyes, and for a moment Martinez thought he'd slipped away. Then he spoke again, his voice carrying a strange note of peace. "I taught him that love was weakness. Turns out I was wrong about that too." Martinez found herself thinking about Jennifer Carlisle, wherever she was now. The young woman had vanished so completely that even federal resources couldn't track her new identity, new life, new everything. A ghost created by necessity, not protection. Another casualty of the Romano family's endless capacity for destruction. "Do you regret it?" Martinez asked. "Any of it?" Vincent was quiet so long she thought he'd fallen asleep. When he finally answered, his voice carried the weight of 40 years of choices. "I regret that it took me this long to understand the difference between protecting someone and destroying them slowly." The door opened softly, and Dr. Hayes entered with the careful movements of someone approaching something sacred and terrible. She checked Vincent's vitals without speaking, her professional demeanor unable to mask the human sadness in her eyes. He'd been her patient for 3 years, and in the strange way of captivity, they'd developed something approaching friendship. "Your son called," Dr. Hayes said quietly. "The warden approved a final visit, if you want it." Vincent opened his eyes, and Martinez saw something flicker there. Hope, fear, love, hatred, all mixed together into something too complex for naming. "What did he say?" "He said he wanted to tell you goodbye." Vincent was quiet for a long time, his breathing shallow but steady. Martinez could almost see him calculating one final decision, weighing the cost of closure against the price of seeing what he'd created one last time. "No," Vincent said finally. "Some goodbyes are too dangerous to survive." Dr. Hayes nodded and slipped back out, leaving Martinez alone with a dying man who'd just chosen to spend his final hours with an FBI agent rather than his only child. The mathematics of that decision felt impossibly sad. "Will you stay?" Vincent asked. Martinez surprised herself by nodding. She'd been planning to leave after delivering the update about the contracting meeting, but something in his voice, not quite fear, not quite loneliness, but something human and broken, kept her anchored to the uncomfortable chair. "I need to tell someone," Vincent continued, his voice growing weaker with each word. "Before I go, I need someone to understand what this was really about." What was it about? Vincent's eyes found hers, and she saw a clarity there that cut through all the lies and manipulations and federal witness protocols. It was about a father who thought he could control everything, and a son who proved him right by destroying himself to escape that control. The words hung in the air like a final confession. Outside, the prison was beginning to wake up, guards changing shifts, inmates shuffling to breakfast, the vast machinery of incarceration grinding through another day. But in the hospital room, time felt suspended, held in place by the weight of ending. "I turned my son into a weapon," Vincent whispered, "and he used himself to kill us both." Martinez stayed until the end, holding the hand of a man who'd destroyed everything he'd tried to protect. When Vincent Romano finally died, just after noon on a Tuesday in October, his last words were an apology to a woman who'd disappeared into a new life, carrying the shrapnel of choices that weren't hers to make. Some stories, Martinez realized, don't end. They just stop, leaving everyone changed and no one redeemed. 3 days later, she submitted her resignation to the Bureau, understanding finally that some victories cost more than defeat.